talked about interfaces, right? We talked about classes and class inheritance, and we're going to do more examples, but let me, before I finish, let me mention this. Primitives are primitives. They are not classes. They are not objects, right? For the most part, that's okay. Sometimes we need an object that wraps around the primitive, right? Classes, objects don't, or primitives don't have methods or anything like that, right? How does the magic actually works for something like toString or something like that? What Java did was create a class that corresponds to each primitive. And it's usually the same name as the thing with a capital letter, but sometimes it's not. Integer is integer, not int, and char is character. I can declare them. They are automatically included. Let me go play with Java repo. So I can do integer I equals new integer. And I can pass an integer. I could do I.get or int value. That would return an int. And I could also use it to convert. So I could have like double value for the all the int classes. Convert from one to another. It used to be a pain for certain things because you had to be able to pass integers instead of ints. What's the main difference? Integer is not mutable, so it doesn't give you that ability of changing it. So you can passing it by reference doesn't help too much, but it is nullable. You could have null, right? Whereas an int always has a value. An integer may have null. But one other, it used to be that you had to mention it. Now it's all magic. So I is an integer, right? But I can do I equals 3, and it does the conversion. It instantiates a new integer with a value of 3 and assigns I to that. Does that make sense? On the other hand, when I do this, oh, it is nice. Now, j equals new integer of 3. Oops, j. It can still get you to these kinds of things where equal is not the same as dot equals, right? But now Java has automatic boxing and unboxing. These are called box types because it's just a box around the primitive. And Java now, for the most part, has auto-boxing and auto-unboxing. So you can go from an integer to an int and vice versa, from an int to an integer. The compiler will do the magic for you. This is how toString works now. That's the secret behind the magic. Does that make sense? This will be important for the next week. Not so much for this one, but it's part about classes and stuff. Now, let's do more class and interface examples, right? You understand everything about classes and interfaces, right? We just need to do 500 examples. Okay, actually, a lot of the real world examples end up not being that great, although we can come up with a few. But within programming now we use them a lot, so I figured we could use that stuff. Java has an interface called iterator. And this magical thing we will see, it is for defining a base type. These are generics. So an iterator is something you can iterate on, like a list or an array, like an array, right? And this tells you what are the values, the type of the values inside the array. It's something like an array, but the iterator interface is one boolean called hasNext, and then one method called next, and one method called remove that we are not going to implement. So, what can I do? I created my new package, March22, and I have a iterable example. I'm going to make them public, because why not? I'm going to extend iterator, but I'm going to say that I'm going to extend iterator of integer, because what I'm going to be returning are integers. This is going to complain because I'm not actually implementing those things, right? So I can come and cheat and do this. Actually, I can do a simpler one. Start with this empty. Nah. Okay. Range. Int range. That's what it was, right? Let me just copy those things and then decide what we want to do. So this returns an integer. It's going to be remove. And let me define this public. This is not a very useful iterator, but what's this problem? It should compile, right? It should run, maybe. Extends is when I'm inheriting from another class. What do I say when I implement an interface? Implements, right? HasNext has to be public, right? Boolean public HasNext. Public. Because the method is public in the interface, and if it wasn't public here, I'm not really extending the interface, right? By the way, that idea is called the Liskov substitution principle. And Barbara Liskov defined it first in classes, but then it's the same thing in interfaces. You should be able to use, you should be able to use members of the subtype instead of an instance of the supertype, right? So it should support the same kinds of things. No, I'm still not talking to you, whoever you are. Okay. Now we should be able to run it and it would compile, right? Yay. imagine that we are gonna want, what does this do, right? You can ask it, do you have any more values, right? As if it was an array or something like that. Do you have any more values? And it would respond yes or not, right? And then if it says yes, then you can call this and it will give you a value, right? So we can do that with a range of integers. So when you call me, you give me the low end and the high end, right? So I'm going to keep this. And what I'm going to do, low, high, and current, which is the one that I have given you, right? So here, how do I know, right? What I'm going to do this is something like this. Right? This is current less than high. Yes, this is magic. This is out-of-boxing and unboxing. I can also make it explicit. Mu. And this is going to do nothing, right? So what's going to happen, right? If I have low equals 5, high equals 10, then current equals 4, right? When you call has next, what's it going to tell you? It's going to say true or false? False. True, right? And then when you call next, what are you going to get? 5, right? Next time you call it, you're going to get 6. We are increasing, right? 6, then 7, until eventually, right, current becomes 10 because you have increased it, right? And so has next would return false, right? So actually, let's do this. Int range we could use this. Right? I invented a horrible way of counting. Does this idea make sense? Yes. Now, why is this interface useful? Well, actually, is this class very useful as an iterator? No, why not? Just because it's not, but what else makes it very, very useless? How many ways can I count? I can only count from 5 to 10, right? Which is not terribly useful. How can I make it more useful? Okay, let's go back. Do you understand what the class is doing? Yes, right? And That's because we have an iterator interface. We are going to build more on this. But now, this class would only count from 4. Oh, that's bad. So we should initialize to 5. But oh yeah. No. So it counts from 5 to 10, right? So it generates all the numbers from 5 to 10, right? That's all it does. What would make it more useful? If it can do, right? Maybe numbers from 1 to 100, or numbers from 1 to 10, or the numbers, right? What do I need to do that? Right? Why does it only generate the numbers from 1 to 10, from 5 to 10, sorry? Because we set these guys, right? So what can we do? Have a constructor that takes my parameters, right? Public, what's the name for the constructor? Same name as the class, right? Low, int high. And this dot current equals low. So now I need to pass it. Let me pass 5 and 10 and count from 5 to 10. Then check that if I pass 7 to 9, it would also work, right? Isn't this really cool? Mildly, right? What would make this more cool is if I complicate this even more with more interfaces, right? This is horrible, but this should work. I'm going to implement another interface, iterable, which I think is the same thing. Now, iterable has a couple of other useless things. Oh, actually, it doesn't have any useless things. It only has one thing for 7. We'll see. Has a thing called iterator, right? That returns a. No, I don't want to do it on this guy. Let me call, yeah. Let me call int range iterator. Let me call this horrible thing int range iterator. Cut and paste the right things. That will work here, right? It should work. Now I'm going to have an interface called iterable that returns an iterator, right? So I'm going to say public static class int range now extends iterable of integer. And I have public iterator of integer iterator turn new in-range iterator of 1 to 10. And that is unfortunately not enough anymore because Java sucks. No, because Java changed. No, because I suck. Hey, isn't this nice? It doesn't suck. What this would allow me to do instead of this is call it as new range, int range of new int range dot iterator. And it doesn't compile, but we can do it. I don't really need the class, so let me use the interface. I could use casting, but it's actually better to use the interface. And now it prints all the things from 1 through 10. Again, not terribly useful because I made this range now not have anything useful. This range needs to have int low and high. It needs to have stuff here, constructor, right? And so I can do 3 to 5, but now I go back to printing 3, 4, 5. Woohoo! We saw 2 new interfaces in Java and had to do horrible stuff. Well, what this allows me to do, right, is this magical stuff. Isn't this cool? No, it's not. Okay. I have basically created a form of collection class, right, that works with this magical syntax for Java, right? Why? Because this gets translated to exactly this code, right? To this guy dot iterator, right? And then that's exactly how it works. That's what the magic of interfaces allow us to do. Isn't this cool? Mildly cool? Could be worse. Do we want to extend on this or got something else? Is this too abstract? Too Questions, comments? Let's move to something else. Sorry?
I didn't get a chance to do it from next class, so no questions as of now.
You have no questions because you're getting everything, right?
No.
Should we do horrible stuff? Let's go look at some other interface. Oh, PrintStream is a class, but implements appendable and closable. Huh. No, that's not it. No, I thought they had it. No, PrintStream is not very useful. How about, and system.out is a PrintStream, right? Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't have, I wanted something that could have print line and something like that. Yeah, the stream classes are fun. Was there a print writer? Yeah. It has too many things. Yeah, I'm not going to implement this. Never mind. We are not implementing this. Let's go to sort of the standard example. Animals. Let's create an interface, right? Animal. What can an animal do? Well, let's do public. I don't even need public, right? Void produce sound. Right? That's my interface, right? I'm gonna create a class. What's your favorite animal? Eagle? Oh God. Okay. How do I say that it implements iAnimal? Yes, that's the, yeah. Void produce. Yeah, I was gonna do dog and cat, but what does an eagle do? Yeah, let's. Something like this. I have no clue what an eagle does. Something like that. It's called a screech in English because it kind of sounds like screech, right? Is it that what they do? I have no clue. Question this guy, right? And so I can do animal a equals new eagle. Yeah, no. Static. And I really need to define them static because I'm defining them inside this same file, and so if I don't, I can't use them from a static context. Normally this would be in separate files, but I find it easier to move within one file, within the confines of the class. A.produce sound. I run this, I get something like that. Need to go eagle sound. What sound does the bald eagle do? This is it.
That's what it says.
And it's not producing any sound. Why is it telling me that you have no sound thingy? You have it? Or now how to represent that in words? Okay. Screech still sounds. So let's create a different animal. Well, actually, could we create a class, right? And if we wanted to keep track of different animals, right? What kinds of things would we want to keep track of them? If you, well, yeah, but we want to keep track of an animal. There are different kinds of animals, dogs, cats, things like that. What kinds of attributes would be useful, right? You want to know the difference between a dog and a bird. What's the difference? Or what kinds of things do we want to store? Are they wild or domestic? Okay. What else?
How many legs?
How many legs, right?
That they can fly.
Yes. So let's create public class base animal. Right? Int number of legs, right? Boolean is domesticated. Right? What else? Maybe double weight and height, or these are averages, weights and heights.
Where does they live? Is it water animals,
Sorry?
aquatic animals, or land?
Is aquatic. Right? Let's do protected. If I declare the class being abstract, I'm saying there are methods that I promise to implement that I won't implement, but my children will do, right? So I can do implement iAnimal. Then here I'm gonna eliminate these guys because I'm too lazy. And then I'm gonna do public get number of legs, public int, So now I can say I'm an eagle. I just need to say extends base animal. Sorry. And I'm in business, right? Now, I probably want to define a constructor. I can say is aquatic false. Yes.
Abstract, what difference does it make?
Abstract is because this class, although it says that it implements iAnimal, that's not actually true. It does not implement iAnimal because it doesn't have a produce sound method. Does that make sense? So by making it abstract, I don't need to put this method. If I don't make it abstract, it complains.
So why do you say implements animals?
Because I want my children to have to implement it, not me. I'm just poisoning the environment for my children. It's right. I'm forcing them to implement it, not me. Just the class is dead. Another thing that I could do is to actually come and implement this thing, and then I don't need to make it abstract. Make it public. With the same effect because I'm overriding it here, right? I can do add override. Now, if instead of an iAnimal, I say that it's a base animal, it would work. Oops. No. I could define, let's define dog. This one is true. Three, four. And then what sound does a dog make? That sound does not make in English. Woof, right? Maybe. Yes, that's what a dog makes in English, right? So that would allow me to have I get woof and screech. Yay! animal, these things were protected, right? So they shouldn't be able to, I shouldn't be able to access it directly, right? Public class millipede. No. We could even move this kind of stuff, right? Because I could have stuff like, say, bird. Although the example is not beautiful. And this would work exactly the same for ooh. Oh, because this should extend bird. And now I have the right number of legs. Does this make sense? How the mechanism works, you're probably never gonna implement something like this. Bunch of things should really be on the instances, right? Eagle would be, or you would have a database of animal types or something like that, rather than a bunch of different classes, one per animal, right? You would probably even store the sound they make, right, or something like that, rather than defining this many classes. But we can define interfaces, we can define classes that implement interfaces, we can define, we can extend other classes, right? If my class is abstract, then it is allowed to not have some of the methods that it's supposed to have by virtue of extending an interface, implementing an interface, or extending some other class, right? And declaring it abstract has the advantage. For example, bird is an abstract class, or it should be an abstract class because I never have the sound that they make, right? Any questions on this? No? You understand the mechanics, you understand what is happening, right? For the most part, I do interfaces all day long. I seldom extend other classes. Sometimes it works, but I don't usually extend other classes. But I extend interfaces all the time. Yeah, actually, sometimes I extend other classes, mainly for testing purposes, for mocking and things like that. But, so you should be aware of the mechanisms, right? Um, in fact, the assignment is going to require you to be aware of the mechanism. Cool. I think. Are there any questions? No? In general, interfaces, classes, we're all good? Static. Okay, I'm sorry because I am confusing you, right? Here's the deal. Let me just explain that stuff. Java has a really cool thing about inner classes, right? What does a static mean? What does static mean in general? Sorry? Doesn't change? Okay, in object orientation, what does it mean? For whatever, right? It's attached to the class rather than to the instances. Does that idea make sense? So a static method, what does that mean? Well, it's attached to the class, not to the instance, right? So I don't need an instance to call a static method. That's why we were doing all of our methods being static, right? That's why main has to be static, because you don't have an instance, right? A static property, what does it mean? It's attached to the class, not to the instance, so all the instances share the same static property. Does that idea make sense? Yes? Yeah? No? Maybe?
All instances shares
The same actual variable, right? We did stuff with like, let me do static int this class doesn't actually have any useful stuff, but what it's going to do in the constructor is increment the number of instances, right? So if here I do system out println, what's this going to print? 2, right? Because I called here, and that increments number of instances. This increments number of instances, right? What happens if I make this? So they're both, right? Both constructors, when they were called, they initialize the same variable. Does that make sense? I could have a variable that's not static, right? Make it public. My number. What I do is increment number of instances, and then my number equals number of instances, right? Just so I keep track of these guys, right? Can I print my number? No, why not? I need an object. I need an instance. My number is not static, right? So I need an object to be able to talk about it. With number of instances, I can't because it is static. There's only one. It belongs to the class, right? So here I would need to do I1.myNumber, right? And then I2.myNumber, right? Let's do it in reverse order. So what would this print? Yeah. first 2 for this guy, and then 2 and 1, right? 2, 2, 1. Does this idea make sense? You understand what static means in this context? Yes. I could have a static method, right? Right? So good, right? The method static is good. Could I have no, why not?
You already have it.
No, it doesn't have it. I need an object. There is no my number attached to the class, so I cannot have a static method that references that field. I need an object. This guy cannot be static. Does that idea make sense? Cool. Now, let me tell you about how I confuse you, right? If I define a class here, right? This class is static. No, right? So in here, can I do this? No, why not? I'm in a static context. I cannot access foo, right? I could actually do, I1.foo, maybe, with the right syntax. There is an inner class called foo. I can't do it here, but I can do it here. I could have a public foo get foo that returns foo, new foo. And then in here, I can do I1.get foo, right? If I don't declare my class to be static, then it is not static. And I cannot create it without having a reference to the class, to an instance. Does that make sense? Which is why all the inner classes that we have been doing should be static. Actually, in reality, they shouldn't be static inner classes. They should be classes in a separate file, right? It's just that for the purposes of teaching during the lecture, it makes more sense to have it in one file. Does that idea make sense? If they were outside, then they don't need to be static, right? So ideally, I would create a new class and Java sucks, idea sucks, and call it iAnimal. Get it from here. Eliminate it here, right? This guy doesn't need to be static because it's not inside any class, right? This would still work the exact same way.
Animals is class. iAnimal is interface.
Yes. I tend to name maybe animal examples or something like that would have been a better name. Animals with an S rather than animal. Normally, if it was a class that represents an animal, it would be animal. Just one. Does this idea make sense? Do you now understand static? I apologize because the confusion stems from me using it that way, right? It's just, I don't want to have 17 files. When you do this in real life, you do have 17 files. Just makes it easier to switch within the IDE if it's just one file. And maybe it makes it easier for you guys to actually go look at the code if it's just one file rather than 17. That's my hope. That's why I'm doing it that way.
One more question. Documentation in Oracle you provide us. Do we need to
memorize it or something like that? No way whatsoever. No, right? No. Why would you do that? For the test, right? You need to know basics, right? Like, oh, you need to know the toString method exists in an object, right? But no, you don't need to memorize any of those things. When you are outside of the class, you always have Google next to you or Bing or whatever, right? You don't always have it, but normally you do, right? And so I tend to put it just as a reference, but nah. Why would you do that? Hopefully, by using things a lot, you end up memorizing a lot of those things, the ones that you use a lot, right? It's also like for string, you need to know that char@, is available because we use it, right? We use it in a bunch of assignments and things like that. So yes, you do need. I expect you to have memorized a few of them, right? Or for strings, you need to know that they have a length thingy. And I can never remember whether it's a method or I think it's a property for arrays. Is it a property for strings or a method? It is a method. For arrays, it's a property just for fun, right? Just because if they were the same, they would be actually easy to remember. So they need to swap it around just makes life more fun. So I do expect you to know that things have length and a few of those things, but by the time you get to the final exam, you have used it 700 times. And I wouldn't even mind if you either ask me during the final or right during an exam, what the heck, how the heck did I get the length? Because actually we are going to see collections next class, and we'll see that for collections, it's actually called size, not length. Because, again, variety is the spice of life. So if you couldn't remember which one was which, right? Length the property, length the method, or size the method, right? And you ask me, or if you are online or if you're taking the exam remotely and you cannot ask me, you just say length and then say, I assume that this is how the heck you got the length of a collection. That would be reasonably okay for those kinds of things. By the time you do this a lot, you would remember some of those things, but you'd be surprised how many things I cannot remember. You'd be surprised how much stuff I Google. On the other hand, you probably want to read some of those documentation pages because many times it's not the same to say, oh, I know they have a size method that's going to give me the size. Let me go figure out whether it was size or length or something else, right? As to never have read that there is a size method, right? And so you don't even know whether that thing exists or not, and you're going to go look it for it, right? Whereas if you know, you would Google it and then search for that within the page or something like that, right? So it's a good idea to have a clue, but you shouldn't memorize that stuff. Any other questions? No? No? Cool. Yes, then let me do that. And by the way, the code is here. If you go to the main GitHub thingy, there is a sample program. Initially I was doing this. Now that we are doing more complicated stuff, I'm creating a folder per date. Sure. And
when our final, because I need to buy ticket.
oh, we can talk. Actually, let me confirm, but let me ask you guys this. Not dynamic bulletin, but final exam schedule.
I saw it's on Wednesday, I guess.
Let's see. Wednesday, December 9th? That doesn't make sense. This is spring.
Spring, sorry.
Yes. Final exam schedule fall of 2015? Yeah, this is an old page. Current. Okay, that's not current, sorry. So class meeting daytime is Monday, right? Monday, Wednesday. It's neither here nor there. We meet at 6:30, but on Mondays and Wednesdays, right? Maybe. Monday, Wednesday. Oh, neither one of those. Beautiful. There it is. So Monday, May the 8th, from 6 to 8.
May
8th? For this class, we usually end up with, and especially since we shifted, we got ahead 1 week, we usually end up with an extra week or two at the end for review and more examples and stuff. So one thing that I've done in the past is use the last day of classes for the final. I don't know whether you guys prefer that or prefer to have it on the 8th. And there's usually 1 or 2 extra things for online. 1 or 2. What's your pleasure? And the last day of classes is when? But that's the last day of classes, not the. Sorry?
Oh, so I'm just reading. Sorry.
March. It should tell me. Last day of classes is Monday, May the 1st. So we could have it on the 1st or on the 8th. What would you guys rather have? Sorry? 1st? 8th? Yes. My standard rule for this is the university says, right, that it is the 8th, right? So as unless everybody agrees that we should do it the 1st, we do it the 8th because that's when I'm supposed to do it.
Especially just getting.
What I will do is do stuff for online students, right? And since 9th is when we need to send this stuff, the 8th is horrible. Although this class has nobody graduating, hopefully. But I will probably have the exam available online from like the 1st or something like that. And so doable that week for online students. And so if you want to do it offline, even if you're face to face, you get access to that same thing. Just because that makes my life easier. It's not a big deal like normally. It's the same way for them. They can come take it here and that kind of stuff. So
It's same final exam or extra?
It's extra hard for the online people. No,
Super hard.
it's the same-ish final exam. I tend to not make the exact same final exam. Just I trust you guys, but it's better if I don't. I tend to never do the exact same final exam. On the other hand, they tend to be reasonably close. Sometimes my idea of reasonably close is not the same, right? Like for the midterm, I'm gonna ask you, right, if it, a bunch of different things, and well, one of them maybe is prime, right? And several of you had much more difficulty with this prime than with anything else, so, right, it's not gonna be the same exam.
So you're gonna cover from first.
It covers the whole thing. On the other hand, other than recursion, everything else you already know, right? Everything, like, if you think about it, you need to know how to define objects, right? You need to know how to add integers or something like that. You're using that all the time, right? So all of this stuff, you need to know how to define functions and methods because you are doing it, right? So all of this stuff that we did at the beginning, you are doing it and you should be able to do it with no problem. The only thing that you need to go back and brush off is recursion because if you only use loops, you forget. Cool. And I will see you guys eventually.